let's do a cage rattle. Martin
Yeah.
Bellingham, would you like to stimulate everyone the way you usually do and get some people moaning, not about this video, about something else, please?
Right, well, this section of the meetings used to be an open discussion on whatever was bugging someone at the time. It generally helps to prime people to think about what's bugging them because there are so many that it's difficult to select one to actually throw into an open discussion. Can anyone have something on the top of their mind that happened yesterday or a week before, which you'd like people to discuss with you?
I think one thing we've seen recently, so our kind of job is we work closely with promotions. So promotions are obviously trying to spend money, and we're on the opposite side. We're trying to make them spend it correctly and spend it appropriately to try and make money from it. And it's kind of constantly do stuff. Okay, this was wrong. Can we learn something from this? They have somebody in their head, it's just wrong. And then 6 months down the line, they ask the exact same question that we said, can we not do this again? And this just cycle just repeats every 6 months. And then you're just kind of banging your head. It's like, can we learn from this, guys?
I notice some people nodding to that problem, perhaps.
Well, I think it generally is in the world of, in our case in Whitbread, obviously we're running with some of the lowest room rates we have done in years to sort of stimulate the market back up again and sort of get the country moving again after the pandemic. The flip side of it is insight into the hotels industry. You make cheap hotel rooms and at the risk of being a little bit divisive here, you do begin to attract rather an unsavory customer. So which is leading to quite a lot of issues in our hotels, police being called, damage being caused, that sort of thing. So normally for those of you who maybe aren't regular customers of ours, in the budget hotel chain sector, we are probably one of the pricier ones. So we generally don't see a lot of that sort of activity. Are still offering great value every day, obviously, but at the same time, we don't normally sort of attract a lot of that custom. So we're kind of suffering a little bit. We've been very successful in terms of restoring a lot of our markets on the back of these sort of room rate promotions. Thankfully, unlike Owen, we don't get into a 6-month cycle on this, but I think we're hoping to get out the other side of this and go, thank God we don't need to sell those really cheap room rates again like we used to about 5-10 years ago. So.
Anything else? Any other burning issues, or is everything quiet on the home front with everyone?
I've got one that's quite topical. So I personally work with a lot of banking transaction data. We do this primarily for insights for government and internal stuff. One of the things that's been growing over the last few years has been sort of buy now, pay later type of transactions, like Klarna, for instance. And it's increasingly difficult to shift your analysis in a temporal sense towards, number one, working what sort of transactions these are, but also working out what they're displacing as well, trying to isolate them. So yeah, I've just spent the last couple of weeks trying to basically remodel all of these buy now, pay now payments. It's pretty tricky.
Anybody got similar solutions or solutions to that, or had similar experiences to that? And here we have the brains of the world all together. Put all that collective onto your problem. This has never happened.
Yeah, I don't think we've got the brains of the world here, Martin, but we've got some brains.
About maybe a more open one. Do we think that data and analytics has played a proper role in the whole COVID? The science behind the actions that the government's taken. Now there's always a science guy stood next to Boris on the 6 o'clock news, but from what I can tell, there's very little of the actions taken that's been related to the actual data. What do you think? Have we learned from this program?
Well, forgive me, I've not noticed. I couldn't remember the name of the speaker we had in one of the last Doug sessions from University of Cambridge, but I think he was much more eloquent about the use of data and with the government and with some of the public announcements than I could possibly be. All I can say from a corporate and from a commercial perspective, I think as a business, I'm firmly of the opinion you need your analysts when things are going badly, way more than you need them when things are going well. When you're making money and you hand over fist, you kind of want to know why, but you're not too bothered about it because you're making loads of money. When you can't make money or it's a bit more of a struggle, that's when you need your analysts the most. So I know at Whitbread, our BI reporting team, our data scientists, our pricing analysts and such like have never been busier.
Yeah, totally agree. And it's the speed that you can actually process your data with it to get. I think that's increased, hasn't it? The demand on us to produce results faster has just got harder and harder, and faster and faster.
You're slightly quiet, Graham.
Yeah, I think we've talked about it in the previous Doug meeting, but quite a lot of our organisations will look at recent trends to help us sort of forecast the short to medium term future in whatever it is we're doing. When, in my case, hotel occupancy and revenues generated, etc. But I'm sure it's different for all of you. Of course, we've got a big hole in our history, which has actually driven sort of quite a lot of data-led, data science style approaches to sort of fill that hole and almost forecast what could have, should have happened to make sure that we've got all that short, medium-term forecasting in place to be able to run the business going forwards. Now, we've been quite effective in that space, but I know that has actually caught out a number of large organizations who are just so used to having that trading history to refer to.
Does that mean that you've had to learn new techniques and methodologies to make that happen, to do that forecasting? Is that something you've never done before?
I wouldn't say it'd be a case of learning new techniques at Whitbread, because I think some of the techniques are fairly embedded. But having to rely so heavily on a forecast, I think, is the interesting one. I think most of the time, forecasts are used to sort of track against sort of the actuals to get a feel for how well the business is doing, how good the forecasters are, etc. It's quite unprecedented that you only have a forecast to work with.
But do you feel that your team department is now more valued by the rest of the business? Has your relationship changed at all because of that?
Interesting question. It's funny actually. I've never felt that the analytics teams within Whitbread aren't valued enough. I think sometimes whether or not they are resourced well enough or technology invested well enough to support them, that's previously been a challenge. That seems to be a lot less of a challenge. I wouldn't like to naturally assume that is because they are now seen as more valuable, but one would like to think so.
Because you were saying earlier that you're involved in loads and loads of different projects because there is new spend on IT. Are they data related specifically, or everything?
Yeah, basically. But some of that's not all just to do with sort of data and analytics. Some of that is around sort of recognizing that as a large organization, and there'll be a number of them on the call who have been trading for, well, we're 1870 something. So, albeit some of our IT systems, I think, do date back that long. But, we're recognizing that we're in a position we need to put our house in order. Like probably a number of the large supermarkets have done with some of their COBOL-based systems that were originally developed in the 60s. They probably only got around to doing those in the 90s or the early 2000s. We're going through a number of different transitions like that, as well as sort of data and analytics-led projects. So it would be, like I say, it'd be wrong to attribute it just to data and analytics, but there is certainly a need to drag the whole IT kicking and screaming into the 21st century.
Thank you.